Terry Hunt, has set 4 of Mr. Stafford's poems to music. Today, we will perform these poems for you. Terry will be playing guitar. Justin Appel is on the piano. Steve Stefanides will be taking a break from teaching biology and chemistry here at the college and singing today. And I will provide an element of spoken word.
Well, thanks so much, Derek, for having me in Wenatchee Valley College. And you all live in a gorgeous area of the world. Cascades, I've never been here before. I've been west, but never up here in the Cascades. Beautiful. As Derek said, my work and my life is deeply influenced by William Stafford's work and life. And long before his Centennial was coming about, I would begin readings with one of his poems. It's one of his better-known poems. It's called The Way It Is. There's a thread you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what you're pursuing. You have to explain about the thread, but it is hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen. People get hurt or die, and you suffer and get old. Nothing you do can stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of the thread. And many of us have many different threads. One of the threads that I've been clinging to for much of my life are poems. And so I'll share a few of those. Since we did just have plenty of good snow around here, I'll read a winter poem. It's called Upon Looking Down Onto the Top of Your Head Where the Hair Has Gone White. And yes, I am my wife's colorist. I am literally her colorist. She says I do the best job. She had her hair colored once by her beautician. She was not satisfied. I said, I can do this, so I'm her colorist. So. Upon looking down onto the top of your head where the hair has gone white. Deep snows drape themselves like the long-loved, leg thrown over leg, arm across breast, hand wandering the tunnels meat carved along the length of the river where the ice is fluorescent. And the last minutes of light are plum, then crabapple, little warmth from this distant fire, burning its way west to a place of remembrance, of indwelling, of turning into. And if many of you are too young to understand that whole indwelling and remembrance and turning into, wait till you find your first grade, get the first wrinkles, and you'll remember. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the term heliotropic. It simply means, right, those plants that follow the light and often will close like a morning glory. They close. Sunflowers certainly are heliotropic and follow the sun. In their early development, eventually their stalks get so rigid that their faces won't continue to follow the sun. This poem is called Heliotropic. In the evening light, the dove's undersides look yellow, and the bush that grows along the porch has flowers red as a tanagier's back. At dinner, hummingbirds come to press needle beaks into trumpet blossoms, the music of their work drowning our conversation. Why would anyone forsake this gospel of beauty? Consider the bees covering the heads of sunflowers, the sunflowers turning to follow the light. When the world is pink and the sun has begun to sink to the other side of the earth, we walk into fields tall with goldenrod to pick the daisies my grandmother called moonpennies, until the dark makes it hard to see, and we must search for the light glowing in the windows of the house to guide us home. And you know what? I'm a former coach. You're on poetry exercise time, so I've got to make sure I don't overrun you here. I don't know how many of you have done that, where you walk towards your home and find your family doing something in the windows and the light illuminates them. And you know you're seeing something and they're not quite aware of you. I have a poem, it's called The Knowledge of the Lord, that sort of picks up where that other poem left. The Knowledge of the Lord. After the first snow, the tallest stalks of goldenrod bed down in the far field. The wind and the sun the past few days have erased the snow, so you might be tempted to think the grasses and those autumn flowers laid down of their own accord. Under the early dark, my boot grinds the dusty flower heads to seed, where they'll wait for next summer's heat. I like coming back through the dark when I can see you moving in the light of the window, setting the table for dinner, or helping our sons with math. As we grow older, the field on windy nights sounds like the waters of a river come to a narrows. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Carl Linnaeus' work, started a couple of hundred years ago, but the work of taxonomy, placing all the species in a way that we can get a sense of the vast variety, biodiversity of the world. So this poem's called Taxonomy. We've been taken captive by the world, named by it, taught to eat from its table. The wetted blade slides through the flesh, thin veil that parts to reveal what we think is the soul. We set fires and burn the earth because berry canes won't come back without dirt as dark as the color of its fruit. Before the oldest trees were felled, we traveled the watercourse. Now, in the open fields, we track coyote, hoping to save the sweet lambs we tend. Sadly, as night stumbles down, all we find are clumps of wool caught in Teasel's fine comb. More than 2 centuries ago, Linnaeus began to arrange all the names we've given back to the world. This is how we know black walnut hulls, when crushed, smell like women, or when we walk through sweet fern, grouse will burst into flight, dragging the plant's sharp scent into the air. Near the stream, a tulip poplar blows down, leaves turning the yellow of mustard and ragwort. Despite the order we've cultivated, the charts we've set to memory, we're likely to discover our way is one of unknowing. When we die, may we be a pleasing word placed in the mouth of the world. And that last line is my little plug for you to all think about. Not dwell on death. There's too much good life to be lived. But when you do die, how are you going to put your body back into the world? I love, right, that we learn from physics that there's no more or less energy in the universe. It's just constantly transformed. Well, how will your energy be transformed someday? We certainly have many religious traditions that have suggested how your body might be transformed. One small aside on this, a buddy of mine, he's a mortician. He happens to be an evangelical Christian, and some of his clients were worried about the second coming and the notion of the body being resurrected whole. And that's the tradition that Jason comes from. And they were worried about cremation. And he said that to these clients, he said, if God's going to resurrect you fully whole, I don't think he's going to have any trouble getting all the pieces back together. So that's a plug from that perspective. We could also go with an Eastern perspective and have a Buddhist monk chop us into pieces for raptors to come and carry us off into the world too. But how will you be a pleasing word placed in the mouth of the world? Where I live is a hunting culture in central PA. And my son in 6th grade came home with a story, and this is one of those poems. I kissed my son Noah goodnight. I went to my office and I wrote this poem to try to give it back to him in the morning because I wanted him to have a sense of what would be merciful to say back to his classmate. And you'll see why with this poem. It's called Accident. They tell the son who tells his friends at school that the father's death was an accident, that the rifle went off while he was cleaning it. I'm not sure why he couldn't wait. We understand the ones who decide to leave us in February, even as late as March. Snows swell, sun disappears, hunting season ends. With 2 deer in the freezer, any family can survive. I know sometimes it feels like you've come to the end of something. Sometimes you just want to sit down beneath a hemlock and never go back. But this late in the year, when plum trees have opened their blossoms, yesterday it was so warm we slept with the windows open, smell of forsythia right there in the room. I swear you could hear the last few open, silk petals come undone, a soft sound like a pad sliding through a gun's barrel, white cloth soaked in more cleaner, removing the lead, the copper, the carbon that fouls everything. My son knows you don't die cleaning your rifle. The chamber's always open. I told him to nod his head anyway when his friend tells the story, to say yes as many times as it takes, to never forget the smell of smoke and concrete, the little bit of light one bulb gives off in a basement with no windows.
Poetry fits to music so well. The first poem I read, I thought, this is going to be a breeze. And the melodies, every one that I read, just there was a melody in the book.
every